Hello friends, welcome once again to another episode of Why Jesus. Our guest on today's show is Tonia from New York, USA. Hi Tonia, welcome to Why Jesus.
Hi Vijay, thank you for having me.
Tonia, before we even shoot off with today's episode, can you tell us a little more about yourself, what you're currently doing, about your family?
Yeah, sure. I just recently graduated and I'm currently working as a nurse here in New York. I live at home with my parents and I'm the middle child, so I have an older sister and a younger sister.
Tonia, we've had other guests on the show who were nurses, some who actually graduated from India, some who graduated from the US, and they all seem to mention a disparity in the recognition of nursing in the world. What are your thoughts on that?
I know in a lot of parts of India or even Asia in general, people look down upon nursing, but here in America, it's something that's really appreciated. And I know from my work experience, I've seen that, people think that doctors are the one who do so much for patients, but really the doctors are in and out within 5-10 minutes. And me, as a nurse, within my 12-hour shift, we spend so much time with our patients, even not just giving medications or washing them. It could be just spending 5-10 minutes with them, talking to them, helping them get their mind off of whatever they're going, And as nurses, we also advocate for our patients a lot. And an example of that would be, I remember when I first started working, there was a doctor and she came in to do a procedure on a patient on the floor. And the thing is, it's a painful procedure. So what she did is she ordered pain medication and she told me to give it to the patient before she does the procedure. But the thing is, the pain medication had to be approved by pharmacy before I can give it. And so the thing is, the pharmacy was, a little busy, so they really didn't approve it as fast. And the doctor was like, oh, I don't have time to wait for this, so I'm just going to go do the procedure. And I had to go in and stop her and be like, listen, you can't do that because, the patient's going to be in a lot of pain, So I'm not going to let you do the procedure. You're going to have to hold off and wait till I give the pain medication. I mean, she was a little mad, but I had to do that for my patient.
Very interesting, Tonia, because it's a general notion that nurses just follow doctor's orders. But from your experience, you're telling me that you do influence what the doctors order.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Now, Tonia, I know there are immense opportunities and the scope of nursing is very varied compared to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little more on the scope of nursing here in the US?
Yeah, so here, there's so many different levels of nursing. So you could start off as an LPN, and or you can get your associates, which is a 2-year degree. But a lot of hospitals are not hiring people with LPNs or associates. They require a bachelor's degree, which is a 4-year. And even after your bachelor's, you can go back and study. You can get a master's and become a nurse practitioner, where you kind of work as almost like a doctor, where you prescribe your own medications, and you can have your own clinic and have patients come see you. Or you can also do master's in informatics for nursing. And not just that, nursing is very broad, where you can do home care, visit patients at home, or you could do clinical nursing. There's it's very a broad profession where you could just go into anything you want.
So how did you get to choose this profession of nursing?
So for me, growing up, a lot of my family members were nurses, and my mom is also a nurse. And so I remember when I was younger, we would have different family members or even family friends that would call my mom for advice. Hey, something happened, what should I do? Should I go to the hospital or should I, And growing up, I was exposed to that. But during this time, I remember when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to go to, I was praying about it. And I was also volunteering at a nursing home, and at this nursing home, all I really did was play games with the elderly people there, or talk to them for a few minutes. But I noticed how me doing that really just took their mind off of whatever they were going through, even if it was just for a few minutes, and that really inspired me to do nursing.
Now, you said you prayed about it, Tonia. Mm-hmm. How did you get into this act of praying?
Well, growing up, I was brought up in a very strict Catholic household. And so we would, I was brought up in Catholic school. We would go to church every Sunday. We would do the rosary as a family every night. But besides that, I'm also part of a prayer group called Interdenominational Christian Fellowship International, led by Brother Dr. Matthews Vergis. And so, who I call Brother Uncle. And so going to these prayer groups, it was every Saturday, so that kind of really instilled my faith in Jesus also.
No, you said that you were brought up in a very strict Catholic family, so I am assuming that you did attend church because your parents kind of told you, Tonia, come on, it's Sunday morning, get to church. Or did you at some point really do that for yourself, Tonia?
To be honest with you, yeah, in the beginning. You know, when I was younger, it's like my parents would just be like, okay, get up, we have to go to church, you know, we have to go to prayer, you know. But growing up, I had a personal experience in my life where I really experienced Jesus. And I think that's what really had a turning point in my life where I started going on my own. You know, it's not even my parents are like, okay, get up, go. But on my own will, you know, I started going.
Can you share that experience with us, Tonia?
Yeah, sure. So I would say it was like a couple of years ago. I used to have acid reflux. So I would throw up like acid, stomach acid every morning. And it would go on for months. And I remember like, when I woke up in the morning, like even if I eat something, I can't keep it down. Like I would still have to throw up, you know? And so I would take medications, I would see doctors, but nobody had an explanation to anything. And the medications weren't even working. So I remember like this went on for months. And I remember one month or one day I woke up in the morning and like I throw up normally, but this time I threw up some blood. And I got so scared, you know? So the first thing I did was I called brother uncle. I called brother uncle and he told me, he was like, you know, why are you so scared? Don't worry, just drink some holy water. So I had some holy water that he actually blessed at my house. So I drank that and I was fine. I never threw up blood after that, but I was so worried, you know, I was like, yeah, if I threw up blood, you know, something has to be wrong, you know? So I asked him, I was like, hey, should I go get an endoscopy exam just to see if everything's okay? And he's like, you know, there's nothing wrong with you, but if you want, go ahead. So I remember going to get this exam done and I got out of the exam room and the doctor came to me and I was so scared it's gonna be something wrong. But he came up to me and he was literally like, it's probably a miracle or something because there's nothing wrong with you. You're completely healthy. And you know, this was like 8-9 months after throwing up acid every morning. So he was like, I don't know how, but it must be a miracle, but there's nothing wrong with you. So, I mean, that's a great experience in my life itself, but I continued to throw up just acid, no blood, for a month or two after, and I would still take medication and it wasn't helping. But I remember one day, like, you know, I found out that my prayer group was going on a trip to Israel. And, you know, during this whole time, I pray. I was like, Jesus, I want to be healed, you know, I want you to heal me. And I remember when I found out about this trip, I just had such strong faith that if I went on this trip, that I would be healed, like I would be okay, you know? And so I remember till the day before I left on this trip, when I woke up in the morning, I threw up and I took medication. But from the moment we left to the airport, till today, I have not thrown up or taken a single medication, and I praise Jesus for that. Another example is next to, like, near my school where I went to college is the church where I have my prayer meetings, right? And it's called Interdenominational Christ Church and in Tappan, New York. And there's a promise in this church that whatever you pray for, it will be answered. And I know so many people, you know, in my personal life who had testimonies at this church, you know? And so I remember, like, when I was in school, there's this thing, so for nursing here in America, it's that you could take a class, and if you fail it once, you could take it one more time. But after the second time of failing it, you can't do nursing there again. So I remember there was this one class that I was struggling with a lot. And I remember, like, I think I had 4 exams that semester, and the first 3 of them I failed. And so the last one was my final exam. So it was like a make it or break it. And I remember I was so terrified because if I fail, then I'm gonna be a whole year behind. So I remember going to this church and I remember praying and I was like, God, I just want to pass this class. You know, I don't want to be a year behind. I remember, like, taking the exam and it was so hard. I was like, oh, there's no way I passed it, you know? But I got my grade back and, like, somehow, like, it's a miracle. Like, I was able to pass the class and the exam, you know? And I praise Jesus for that. Another story that I would like to share is that I remember last summer when I went to take my national board exam. So I was studying all summer for this. And I remember it was like 3 months straight I would be studying, and it's like all day. So I would wake up in the morning, I would go to mass, and I would go to the library and study. And I would study all day till the library is closed. And I remember, like, if anybody asked me what I studied, I would not even know what to say, because it's just like literally goes through one head and like one ear and out the other. And if anybody asked me what I studied, I wouldn't even be able to answer it because I didn't retain anything I was studying, you know, even though I was studying all day. And I remember, like, I was so terrified before the date of my exam. So I called brother uncle and I asked him to pray, and he prayed for me, and he's like, don't worry, you'll be fine, you know? And I remember I went in to take the exam, and it was I took 5 hours to take the exam. I did all the questions, and I remember as I was going through each question, it was like stuff that I'd never even heard of, and things that I've never even learned in nursing school or studied or anything. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna pass this. I was so afraid. But when I got my results, by God, Jesus' grace, I was able to pass on the first try. And I praise God for that.
Those are amazing stories, Tonia, especially throwing up blood. That's medically a red flag, and that's very convincing. Now, Tonia, you sound so firm in your faith, but has there been any times in your life where you've doubted your faith in Jesus, or you've had questions regarding your faith, where you've like, is this all true, or why am I really believing in all this?
I mean, yeah, as humans, we all have our, doubts. But I think for me, it's like when I'm praying for something, but I'm not getting answers. I think that's when when I start going back in my faith, But what I do is that I have this journal where I write everything, like all the personal experiences that I've had and where Jesus has worked in my life, I've written down in this journal. So when I have these dips in faith, I would read through this, and that reminds me of everything Jesus has done for me, even at my lowest point where he's brought me back up, And so I also read the Bible. So and I attend the prayer group that I attend. We have fasting prayers, and all of these combined really help me to come back in my faith.
Now, being a youngster, how has your faith in Jesus affected your social life?
It's been hard, when I was younger. I remember, because like I said, the prayer meetings would be Saturdays. And so since Monday to Friday we would have school, Saturday would be the day that all my friends would hang out. So I remember, many times when I was younger, like a lot of my friends would hang out. If it's in the evening, I would never be able to go because we had prayer meeting. Or even if it was like, in the afternoon, I would go, but then my dad would come pick me up, and I would have to leave early. And I remember I used to get made fun of a lot for that, And so yeah, like when I was younger, like a lot of my friends used to make fun of me. But growing like as I grew older, I realized that like the friends that I have now are really like supportive in my faith.
Now, what would you say from all your experiences being a youngster? What are the challenges that the youth today face to live their faith in Jesus?
I mean, here I think we have a lot of challenges, especially as the youth, because there's so many people, like even my friends, like a lot of them, they do a lot of things that wouldn't really follow the teachings of Jesus. So a lot of peer pressure is involved, and it's really hard, but you just have to pray and overcome it. Yeah. And also I remember in school I had a difficult time with this. Like in school they would teach us evolution, but that's completely opposite of what the Bible teaches, so that also had like a little bit of a stress in faith and living your faith.
Yeah. All right. Now, Tonia, have you been able to share your faith or belief in Jesus to someone else in your age group or any of your friends and draw them to Jesus or to believe in Jesus?
Yeah, so I mean, there's many, like a lot of my friends, like I said now, have the same faith that I do. So it's easy for me, for me to speak to them about my testimonies and for them to, share their experiences. But I remember when I was in nursing school, I had a friend and she, like I said, you can only do nursing classes twice, and if you fail, you can't do nursing there again. So I remember she did nursing once and she, one of the classes she failed. So then she was a year behind, so then she was in my class. And I remember they failed her for one of the classes my year also. So that would be her second chance in failing, right? And she was really upset because they really didn't have a reason to fail her. They kind of just threw it on her last minute. It was like, oh, well, you didn't pass this class, so you're out. And I remember she was so upset. And I remember talking to her and I was like, telling her about my prayer group and, brother, uncle, and how she should, the experiences that I had in my life and how she should come, So I remember, I brought her to the prayer group and she actually just recently was able to get back into the program, complete her course. She recently just graduated and passed her NCLEX on the first try.
Now, when you try to share your faith with others, especially youngsters, have you had any discouraging or disappointing responses from them?
Oh yeah, sometimes it's hard because a lot of my friends, even though a lot of them have the same faith as me, there are some who don't. So I remember one time I went and I was sharing my experiences with one of my friends and I gave him a Bible, but when I did that, he literally just cursed me out, yelled at me. He's like, I don't need that, And it's hard because it's my close friend. So when they're giving me a response of what I actually expected, it hurts a lot. But I just really pray for them.
What would you say, Tony, is the greatest character of Jesus that attracts him to you?
I would say that he is so loving and forgiving. Because, even in my personal life, there's so many times where, like I said, I had dips in faith, or I've fallen, or I've turned away from God, even through all of these experiences. And yet he was so loving and forgiving that he always just takes me back to him.
Is there any aspect of your Christian faith that you're not very comfortable with?
I would say it's, within Christianity, like sometimes some of us look down upon other religions. And I don't think that's right because, like some of these Christians, they hate other people for having other religions. And for for example, for me, like I was brought up in a Christian faith, that's how, and some other people are brought up in other religions. And I feel like for our job as a Christian is to spread Jesus and, to spread his word. And we're never going to be able to do that with hate. Jesus is love. And for them to see Jesus through us, we have to show them love,
That's a true fact. Definitely, Tonia. Now, Tonia, is there any person that has inspired you in your faith in Jesus?
I would say there are many people, but I would say someone who's very close to me is my dad's mother, so my grandma. And I remember so she came to America and stayed with us from when I was 6 months old till about 8-9 years. And I remember she used to pray all the time. She would just be sitting on the couch reading the Bible, and she would have the rosary with her all the time. And she is one of the, she's the one who would pray with me when I woke up and before I go to bed, And even the prayers that she taught me then before I would go to sleep is the same prayers that I still do now, even before I go to sleep, But what really touched me is that, she's been through a lot in life, whether it's family stuff or even health, And even through all of it, she still had that faith in Jesus, And that strong faith in Jesus is what always remained, no matter what she went through in life. And that really inspired me that reminds me that no matter what I go through in life, just always have that faith in Jesus.
Now, Tonia, when you're not working and not praying, what do you do to relax?
I love to watch Indian movies. I like to travel, and I listen to a lot of music.
Now, you said you like Indian movies. Who's your favorite actor?
Niven Pauly.
Any favorite movies?
I love Om Shanti Oshana.
How about music? You were mentioning you like to listen to music. Any specific genre of music that you like?
I listen to anything and everything, but Christian music really has a special place in my heart.
Do you have any favorite song or artist?
Yeah, actually, from The Inside Out by Hillsong. And there's a line that says, 1,000 times I've failed and still your mercy remains. And that really touches me because it really explains my life, I've failed so many times and I've went back and I've fallen so many times in my life, and yet Jesus is always there to welcome me back to him.
Coming back to working as a nurse, Can you share some of the most rewarding experiences in your work experience so far?
Oh, I have so many. But one of them would be that, sometimes I have patients who are very thankful for the smallest things that I do for them. I remember I had a patient and I went to give her 10 o'clock meds, just like every other patient. And I remember she was telling me how she hasn't slept the night before or the past couple of nights, and all day she was awake and she's having trouble sleeping. And I was it's okay, try sleeping again, but I'll come check up on you in the middle of the night, and if you still can't sleep, I'll talk to the doctor and we could figure something out. So she's like, okay. And all I did, I'm telling you, is I tucked her in. That's all I did. So 6 o'clock in the morning I checked her on in the middle of the night, but she was sleeping. And so 6 o'clock in the morning I go up and I check, I was giving her 6 o'clock morning meds. And I was like, oh, how did you sleep? And she's like, you are literally an angel. I haven't slept like that in a long time, And she was so thankful. I could see it in her face, how genuinely thankful she was, for the smallest thing that I did.
Has there been any experience where you thought, what was I thinking when I took up nursing?
Yeah. So I remember it was actually recently, I had this young patient. And so I remember that day I was so busy at work because one of my patients coded, and I had to give pain medication to another patient every 2 hours. So I was very busy running from room to room, and in the middle of this I had another young patient. So he came up to me and he's like, hey, I need my narcotics. And I was like, you're not due for the medication right now, but I'll give it to you when you're due for it. And he got so angry. He's like, no, and he started cursing me out. He was just throwing things. He was just so frustrated, And usually I would get back and I would get angry, But like, I mean, I guess that day, like, or every other day when I go to work, I usually there's a chapel upstairs. So I go to the chapel and I pray before I start my shift every time. And I guess it's that day itself, I was just so calm with him. I was just so nice. And I was like, listen, like, I'll talk to the doctor, but I mean, I can't really do much right now, and I'll see if we can help you out.
Tonia, what are your plans for the future?
I would like to go back to school. I want to get a master's in nursing, but I'm not sure exactly in what. But I would also like to work for Jesus a lot more.
Now, if you were given a chance to go back in time, is there anything that you'd like to do different in your life?
No, because I feel like Jesus brought me through everything that I've been through in life so far to get where I am today. Like, I don't think I would be who I am today without my acid reflux. You know, that's where I really experienced Jesus in my life. So I don't think I would really go back and change anything.
Now, if I were a genie, the genie from Aladdin, the lamp, and I were giving you a chance to change something in the world today,
Yes.
What is the one thing you wish you could change?
I think it would be poverty. I would say that because, like, I know many times when I was younger, or when I went to India, or even here in New York City, like, I see so many people in the streets who have no food, clothing, shelter, and especially here in the winter time when it's so cold, like, my heart really goes out to them, and I feel so bad, because we have so much, like, I have so much to eat, and food, clothing, shelter, everything, and I feel so bad for those who don't.
So, Tonia, you mentioned poverty. Now, how do you think you as Tonia can change the poverty in the world today?
Well, something that I've always wanted to do was go on mission trips. Even when I was in school, like, a lot of my friends did it, but I couldn't really do it because of my school schedule and my classes. And even then, I just recently started working, so that also kind of prevented me from going on these trips. But something that I would like to do in the near future is hopefully go on these mission trips to third world countries and help out the less fortunate.
As we conclude today's show, Tonia, what would you like to tell from all the experiences that you've had in your life so far? What piece of advice can you give the young generation today?
Well, first of all, what I would like to do is share a poem that really has touched me in my life. There has been times when I felt so low and I felt so alone, and this poem has really made an impact in my life. So I would like to read that. This poem is called Footprints, and the author is anonymous. And if anybody wants, you can get this poem online or at any Christian store. It's a very famous poem. So, Footprints in the Sand. One night I dreamed I was walking along the beach with the Lord. Many scenes from my life flashed across the sky. In each scene, I noticed footprints in the sand. Sometimes there were 2 sets of footprints. Other times there was only 1. This bothered me because I noticed that during the low periods of my life, when I was suffering from anguish, sorrow, or defeat, I could only see 1 set of footprints. So I said to the Lord, "You promised me, Lord, that if I followed you, you would walk with me always. But I have noticed that during the most trying periods of my life, there has been only 1 set of footprints in the sand. Why, when I needed you the most, have you not been there for me?" The Lord replied, "The years when you have seen only 1 set of footprints, my child, is when I carried you." So I would like to share or remind my young friends out there that no matter what we're going through in life, even if you feel like you're at your lowest point and you feel like you have no one to turn to Jesus, because no matter what, he will always be there to welcome you with wide open arms.
Thank you so much, Tonia, for joining us on Why Jesus. We and the entire crew here at Work to World Studios New York wish you the best of luck for all your future plans.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, folks, for joining us on another episode of Why Jesus. Make sure to tune in again, same place, same time next week. Until then, have a blessed week.